So yeah, thanks for taking the time to let me discuss Matterport with you today. So I just want to give you a little bit of an insight in terms of Matterport, what it does, where it fits, but I also want to kind of set the scene a little. I think the slide you're kind of seeing at the moment is a real impact statement. I heard this a couple of years ago when I attended Autodesk University, but the virtual version, because we were obviously within the height of the pandemic. So if we read that slowly, 90% of all data in history has been collected since 2019. Now, that's quite phenomenal when we think about it. But in reality, this doesn't show any sign of slowing down. It's only going to get more. We're collecting so much data, and we've made it so easy to collect data now that there is an argument and a case here that we're going the opposite way. We're not being as efficient as what we should be, and we're actually becoming data hoarders as such. So the difficult part is often about filtering through to find the data that is important to us on our projects. Now, my background in construction has always come from kind of, how are we using the data? How are we being efficient with it? What is the workflow that the scan data will go through to achieve our final goal? And we can see from this that despite us collecting this massive amount of data, we're still continuing to be inefficient with it. The sending point clouds to customers actually has a reliance on that customer or that person in the design team that they know their software well enough that they are able to operate and understand what they are looking for to spot that same issue. And that often leads to miscommunication between it. But the great thing about the laser scanning element of this and what we're talking about is you don't miss a lot, if not anything. You're used to going with your tape measures and measuring up. This thing will fire 1 million measurements a second, so you're not missing anything. But I really do think that we need to look at how we understand that information. The data side of it is really easy now. Gone are the days of only a surveyor coming to site to do the scanning. Yes, they are very skilled. There are certain procedures where they are the person to come in and do it, but laser scanning is a much more open field now, and a lot more people can do it. The firms that we've got on here have made it so easy to actually capture the data. It's simply click a button half the time and move out the way so you're not in the scan data. So the data side is really easy. But for me, the emphasis is on this ingestion side. It's on the understanding of the data that we're actually collecting and finding the information that's important to then communicate with the others in the team so that issues can be resolved more efficiently and faster. And that's where we start to see the benefit from this. So just as a little example, if you haven't seen Matterport before, Matterport are a company that are about 12 years old now, and we've often been considered predominantly in markets such as residential real estate. You may go onto a website and you might see a virtual tour of a home that you may want to purchase. That's usually done by Matterport. This very hands-on experience where you kind of walk around, click where you want to go. So it really is quite unique, but it's extremely versatile. We work in a lot of different industries, everything from residential real estate to travel and hospitality, commercial real estate, and even into AEC as well. But as you can see, it gives you the ability to overlay your 4K imagery with essentially your mesh or your point cloud and move around that in a URL, essentially a cloud-hosted version. So it's accessible by anybody in the design team, no matter where you are around the globe. But as I said, there are many use cases for technologies like this. So don't just think as a laser scan for using measurements and taking measurements. It's for a lot more than that. And we can see just a very brief outline there of some of the teams in a project that could benefit from having that digital twin, that representation which is captured by the camera or the scanner. the design element right up front. We may be looking at how we retrofit or renovate a particular environment, or maybe even extend to it. We need to understand the existing environment in a lot of detail. We need to understand the risks, the condition of that building before we start building it out. And there's no better way to do that than looking through laser scans. You can see some of the other elements on there in terms of capturing the build of the site on a regular basis, documenting that site so that we do have a representation of what happened at that time, a nice stamp point. And again, those can be used for archiving and for referring back to, should we need to know what was actually installed behind this wall. One of the main use cases that Matterport have had in the past is this marketing and sales, this promotional use case, trying to encourage people to either purchase that house or book their reservation at this hotel or restaurant. But that even works for construction as well. I mean, if you think about an architect, their end product is the design of the building, bringing it from digital to real life. So they should be marketing and promoting that through something like Matterport. The contractor themselves will want to promote the quality of their work, as well as documenting that, as we've stated. So lots of use cases through many different teams in the organization. Just to highlight a little bit more on some of those use cases, we can kind of see that project lifecycle very basically broke down into your existing, your initial design stage, and then the building and the handover of that. And these are some of the tasks that where not only Matterport can be used for that, but laser scanning and the technology just in general. I mentioned design risk assessments and condition surveys. You know, we're used to handing over PDF reports or documents with hundreds of pages and thousands of photographs in, and it really becomes difficult to filter through and find those that are actually going to have a prominent impact on the design of the building. If we're offering the data in a much more accessible way, it makes it easier to ingest, to understand. As we move through, you've got things like the deliverables that we export out from our platforms. So again, not only having the showcase viewer where you can walk around your virtual tour, but taking that point cloud data out as, say, an E57 or an RCP, an XYZ, or even the mesh file formats in OBJ. As we look towards that final handover stage, again, what we're handing over to the building owner is essentially the perfect time to do a scan. You know, before the doors open and people start coming in, this is the part in time where not only the architect is benefiting from promoting his design, the contractor has a documented version of the site, what he has handed over prior to snagging. But the building owner can use it as a promotional asset as well. And we often see a lot of companies and facilities managers using the Matterport environment as a training asset to allow people to understand their work environment and train them through the bits of equipment they might be using in the future. So one thing I'm a firm believer of, and it's great to have obviously the other speakers on this at the moment, is that all scanners are not the same. There's always the comparison between brands and how does your scanner compare to this scanner. They're designed with different purposes in mind. And I think choosing the right tool for the job is a real emphasis on here. So ask the right questions to understand what camera you're going to use at the front, what scanner you might use, and the data flow as we go through. Which pieces of software is that data going to be going through, and what is the purpose of the data going through, to make sure that you actually are using that right tool. I think one of the things here at Matterport that we pride ourselves on a little bit is our camera ubiquity strategy. The idea that you will always have at hand an item or a camera where you can capture a Matterport space. And that starts as basic as the camera in your pocket, which is really great. Whilst you're not going to get as accurate data from that, it's still going to give you a digital reflection of the entire environment. And it's really, really easy to use. So if you haven't, I suggest downloading the Matterport app, signing up for the free account and giving it a whirl. As you go up the list, you start to get into higher accuracies. You start to get into a slightly more cost depending on it. And the two cameras that I'll just pull out here are the Matterport Pro 2, which is an infrared camera. Infrared technology being different to LiDAR. It has its pros and cons in each. But also our Matterport Pro 3, which is the camera we released at the back end of last year, which is our LiDAR laser scanner. So just to highlight a little bit on that, LiDAR is typically the norm in AEC, and obviously the other brands here today do have LiDAR scanners available. And again, it's a case of LiDAR is extremely powerful in terms of capturing data indoor and outdoors. The LiDAR is not affected by, say, sunlight like the infrared might be. Accuracies tend to get a lot improved. And again, it gives you that real flexibility, that ability to literally put your camera in an environment, hit go, and capture millions and millions of data points. Now, as you capture an environment, the second part of this is about the deliverables and what we kind of offer, how that workflow goes through the stream from one to the other. So I just wanted to highlight a few. I mean, the automated showcase viewer that is presented to a customer has a number of tools in, things like being able to measure, being able to look at the floor plans, being able to cut sections through the property, and actually tagging elements in there. They're all there in a standard deliverable that we provide to you. But there are those file formats that you will want to take out and go further. So typically those are your point cloud formats, your mesh files. And those are usually used to start the scan to BIM process, the process of essentially translating a point cloud or tracing over it and turning it into a building information model. Now, one of those things on there, and one of the items that I'd like to talk about a little bit more in detail, is that scan to BIM. I did it in practice, and I must admit I went to university and I didn't train to do a color by numbers job, tracing over the top of a point cloud. My time could be spent more efficiently. The design team's time could be spent more efficiently doing design related tasks that are more prominent. So what Matterport have actually released as part of one of our deliverable options is a service that will convert your point cloud to a building information model file. Now that is an Autodesk Revit supported file, but we also provide the IFC file format as well, which is software neutral. And this really does give you the LOD 200 kind of starting point to then evolve and layer and add information to that as you go through. So just in summary, there's a lot of opportunity with scanning. It is a process that is becoming simpler. As I mentioned before, the data element is getting easier to do, but we need to understand our requirements on a job. We need to understand what we're doing with the data and how it travels. And I hope that's been useful to you. There is a link on the bottom right corner there if you want to have a look at a Matterport space and have a dive into some of it. There's thousands of example spaces on there, so please do so. And with that, I'll look to change over to Charlie from Geomax.